Hello everyone, my name is Ellery. I am an English and Chinese teacher here in Taipei, Taiwan, and I am making these videos here on YouTube to share my ideas about language learning and teaching, some advice and some tips, and just general thoughts and putting questions out there into the world to start some discussion. For all of these videos, down below in the description you'll see a table of contents, so there'll be time capsules where you can press the time and you can skip ahead to a certain part of the video, because I tend to talk a lot and I tend to ramble, so there's going to be many things that I'm going to share, and so the videos might get a little long. Please feel free to just skip ahead to any point, to any particular thing you want to hear about. In addition to that, if you would like, please subscribe. I am going to talk about Chinese and learning tones in this video. And because many people on YouTube want to see language learners and teachers speak in their foreign languages on their YouTube channel, I'm going to do a little bit of German or a little bit of Chinese to sum up basically what I said in English at the end of some of my videos. And I'm doing that mostly because there are just so many people who are like, oh, in this video it's about Chinese, but you didn't speak any Chinese, or this is about German, but you didn't speak any German. So to appease those people, I'm going to speak a little bit in either German or Chinese at the end of the videos that I make. And so in the end of this one, I'll summarize a little bit of what I said about tones in Chinese. So let's get into it. In learning Chinese, tones are a big part of learning Chinese, and many people don't even start learning Chinese because of tones. But once you get past that fear factor and you get into learning Chinese, you are confronted with the reality that there are so many words and phrases and so much grammar that you have to learn, and then on top of that you have to learn tones. So what are you to do with that? And just to give a little bit of context for some of my advice and some of my tips for tones in this video, I'm going to first share a little bit about my personal experience with learning tones, because it's kind of an interesting story. I started learning Chinese at 14 years old in high school, and I took Chinese Monday through Friday, hour a day, for 4 years. And in that time I did almost no listening to any native speaker audio. I had a non-native speaker teacher who was fantastic, and that was my exposure to Chinese, was my class time, and then my homework was no listening. So I really did a lot of learning of new words and phrases and grammar, but I didn't really hear the tones until I went to China. And it was actually in China where I heard tones for the first time. I went after 3 years of learning Chinese. I was there 3 weeks in the summer of 2007, and something just clicked where it was like, oh, and everything just kind of made sense. And then when I spoke, I was able to speak more with the tones, but by and large I had kind of more or less ignored it because I had never really heard it, never really understood it. So when I learned new words, I wasn't really paying attention to tones too much. Then in college, I took part in a summer program where the teachers were asked to interrupt students whenever the students spoke and to correct their tones if the students spoke incorrectly. In addition to that, we had one-on-one drill classes with a native speaker teacher who would have you read your speech and correct every single time you spoke. If you had a wrong tone reading your speech, the teacher was to correct you. And it was there that I realized that my accuracy, particularly when I was reading a text, was incredibly low. And I was maybe getting 70% of the tones right when I was speaking in conversation, and way lower when I was actually reading, especially getting the combinations of when you have two words put together. You also have to think about how these two words relate to each other in terms of tone changes and the rules. For example, when you have third tone, and how that changes, or when you have a negative, 不, how it can change to second tone, for example. So those kinds of things, and having to think about them, and having previously by and large ignored them, really came to haunt me. And that was an incredibly painful experience where my confidence went from really, really high to staggeringly low. I just all of a sudden realized, wow, it was like a complete, like, huge wake-up call, basically. And then what I did was I went back and I wasn't going to give up on Chinese, even though it was so painful to go through this immersion program. It was full immersion, no English ever, and Chinese tones corrected all day, every day. And by the end of that, I corrected a lot of my tones, but I also just became hyper aware of tones, which is a really good quality once you get to intermediate level. So I really encourage students, sort of transitioning now into advice and tips time, I really encourage students to, once they get to that intermediate level, to then build that hyper awareness. So at the beginning, when you start learning Chinese, look at tones and you'll probably forget them, and that's okay, but try to remember them, but don't drill them. I wouldn't recommend drilling tones or spending a lot of study time drilling tones at the beginning. You really need to get into Chinese, learn words, learn phrases, and if you're spending a lot of study time drilling tones or really practicing tones, you could have spent that time learning words. A great way to get around that is to do lots of listening. So if you want to have the click and you just hear it, you need to hear the tones. And a great way to hear the tones is by doing a lot of listening. So whether you're in a high school class, college class, or you're studying by yourself, doing extensive listening and maybe reading along as you're listening is really going to help you with tones. And then another thing to try is having a one-on-one drill with a private tutor who can correct your tones as you're speaking in similar fashion as my teachers did in that program. It was, again, really painful, but it was also really helpful. I think if I hadn't had that experience, I'd probably have much lower accuracy today with my Chinese. So, and then that builds that hyper awareness when you're reading something out loud or when you are speaking. And that's a really important skill, I think, in Chinese. In addition to that, I would say another great thing to do is to start making lists of words, and you drill them or you practice them as these are all making the same combination. So for example, third tone to second tone. And you can learn little tricks like third tone to second tone. So it kind of sounds like someone going, 美国. And then practice that with all of a list of words that go third tone, second tone. And they should all sound, what you're doing with your voice, should be the same with all of them. So you practice that repetition. Another good one is first tone,医生. And you say that with all of these words that all go first tone, first tone, first tone, first tone, first tone, first tone, and practice that, and practice getting your first tone to be high enough. That's a common problem, is that the first tone is never high as it should be. And you'll notice actually in Chinese news broadcasts that the first tone is particularly high. It's extra high in more standard Mandarin. So having, again, practicing that with a native speaker can really improve your accuracy and your awareness with tones. And not just 3-2 and 1-1, but also other combinations of tones, and then practice them in lists. And I've had other I've had other friends who learn Chinese as a second language who have also told me that they did that and found that really to be pivotal in helping them get higher accuracy with tones. And then aside from that, the only other thing I really have to say about tones is to not fret too much. Don't make it into a situation where it makes you hate Chinese, because that can easily happen, and I think it can be really discouraging. But at the same time, don't get so lax that you speak Chinese with no tones. I've met learners who completely ignore tones, 110%, and then they speak Chinese with just completely no tones. 你想吃什么? It's just like, I can't even really do it. It's just like, it's like completely monotonous, kind of monotone Chinese. Also, don't do that. So it's about finding the right balance and really my advice is not stress it too much until you get to the intermediate level and you've already really got a good base on tone. You've got a good base on Chinese, and then you can really get into drilling tones and taking some time aside from your regular learning of words and phrases and grammar to just practice drilling the tones and building some tone awareness. That's pretty much everything that I have to say about tones. And as promised now, I'm going to talk a little bit about tones in Chinese. 我个人认为，我建议我的学生不要花太多时间练习声调，特别是一开始的时候。我现在教5个学生，大部分的学生他们还没有学到一个比较高的水平，所以我会建议他们练习的时候，跟朋友练习的时候，他们在练习讲话，他们在练习，他们在写他们的功课之类的。我不会建议你一开始花太多时间在声调上。那之后你学好中文之后，你就可以像我一样，我那时候在大学的时候，我去参加一个暑假的一个项目，在北京，然后在那里所有老师都需要打断学生，马上纠正他们的声调。那时候我自己觉得非常非常的难过。其实我有好几次我差一点哭了，因为我真的觉得，我以为我中文非常好，然后现在我跟这个老师聊天，我每一句话他都打断我说你刚刚讲的不对，然后纠正我的中文，我就发现说，天哪，本来我的中文其实说的没有那么好，但是我非常高兴我有这个经验，因为这个经验告诉我，其实你需要去注意这些声调，你不能忽视它们。但是我也知道，我如果从一开始就非常注意声调，我会花很多时间在声调上，然后不会学新的单词，我会学得更慢。所以我觉得要找一个平衡点，不要完全忽视声调，但是也不要太担心，也不要花太多时间练习声调。那当你学到一个比较高的程度之后呢，我觉得可以1对1跟一个老师一起练习，他可以纠正你，你可以把一段话念出来，然后老师可以纠正你。这样的练习对很多学生来说应该有非常大的帮助。对，基本上这是我的建议。然后我自己的经验告诉我这样练习最好，但是我也知道可能不同学生有不同的想法，不同的学中文的人都会有不同的想法，这是我自己个人的经验。然后我也其实蛮好奇的，如果你是学中文的，你是怎么学声调？你是怎么练习声调的？那在下面的留言可以分享一下你自己的一些看法。如果你是中文母语者，你也可以分享一下你自己觉得，外国人学中文的时候应该怎么学声调？其实有很多，我相信有很多不同的练习方式。我今天只分享了一些我的个人看法。那今天就讲到这里。然后下次我可能会做一个德文的影片，那当然我德文只学了3年，所以可能会讲的还好，就不要期待太多，对。那今天就讲到这里，然后下次见，拜拜。